territories that stretch America's borders across 2 oceans and 6,000 miles of open water. From Puerto Rico in the Caribbean to Guam in the Western Pacific, the United States controls 14 territories that most Americans couldn't find on a map if they tried. Yet 4.6 million people live under the American flag in these distant islands, and they serve in the military at higher rates than most states while being denied the right to vote for president. The story of how America came to own islands thousands of miles from its shores begins not with conquest, but with coal. In the 1890s, naval strategist Alfred Thayer Mahan argued that modern navies needed coaling stations scattered across the world's oceans. Without these refueling stops, America's steam-powered warships couldn't project power beyond coastal waters, and his ideas reshaped American foreign policy, leading to an empire that still exists today. Everything changed in 1898. The Spanish-American War lasted just 4 months, but its aftermath permanently altered America's place in the world. When Spain surrendered, the Treaty of Paris handed the United States control of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines for a payment of $20 million. Overnight, America had become a colonial power, with territories spanning from the Caribbean to the Western Pacific. But the treaty was just the beginning. In 1899, the United States signed the Tripartite Convention with Germany and Britain, dividing up the Samoan Islands. America took the Eastern Islands, creating what we now call American Samoa, and unlike other territories acquired through war or purchase, American Samoa's leaders actually petitioned to become part of the United States. They wanted protection from German colonial ambitions. The strategic value of these islands became horrifyingly clear on December 7, 1941. Japanese forces didn't just attack Pearl Harbor that day. They simultaneously struck Guam, Wake Island, and the Philippines, and within hours, America learned that controlling distant islands meant defending them. Defending them required enormous military resources. Guam fell in 2 days. Wake Island held out for 2 weeks before surrendering. The Philippines lasted 4 months. World War II transformed how America viewed its Pacific territories. What had once been coaling stations became unsinkable aircraft carriers, and islands that seemed worthless in peacetime turned into stepping stones for projecting power across the world's largest ocean. After the war ended, the United States held onto every piece of Pacific real estate it could justify keeping. In 1917, even before entering World War I, America had purchased the Danish West Indies for $25 million. The Wilson administration feared Germany might seize these Caribbean islands and use them as submarine bases. Today, we call them the U.S. Virgin Islands, home to 87,000 American citizens who, like all territorial residents, cannot vote for president. The Northern Mariana Islands came under American control through a different path. After World War II, the United Nations created the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, placing various island chains under U.S. administration. While most of these islands eventually became independent nations, the Northern Marianas chose in 1975 to become a U.S. Commonwealth, and today, Pentagon officials call these islands America's secret weapon in the Pacific. Here's what makes America's territorial system so unusual. These aren't colonies in the traditional sense, but they're not states either. They exist in a constitutional gray zone that the Supreme Court created over a century ago. In a series of decisions called the Insular Cases, the court ruled that the Constitution doesn't fully apply to territories. They belong to the United States, but aren't part of the United States, and it's a distinction that affects millions of Americans today. Take American Samoa. People born there are U.S. nationals, but not U.S. citizens. They can serve in the military, and they do at higher rates than any U.S. state, but they can't vote in federal elections unless they move to the mainland. It's the only place under the American flag where birthright citizenship doesn't automatically apply. And here's the twist. Many American Samoans want to keep it that way. They fear that full citizenship might invalidate their traditional communal land ownership system. Puerto Rico presents an even more tangled case. Its 3.2 million residents are U.S. citizens, but the island isn't a state. They've held 6 referendums on their political status with mixed and disputed results. They pay most federal taxes but receive less federal funding than states, and they send a delegate to Congress who can speak but not vote. As their non-voting representative Stacey Plaskett puts it, "We are American citizens who cannot vote for president. We fight in America's wars but have no voice in Congress." The military dimension of America's territories goes beyond anything most people realize. Today, 30% of Guam is U.S. military property. The Pentagon spends $3 billion annually on the island and is currently engaged in an $11 billion construction program. Military commanders have long called Guam the tip of the spear, America's furthest forward base in the Pacific. As tensions with China escalate, that spear is getting sharper. The military is installing new missile defense systems and relocating 5,000 Marines from Okinawa to Guam. But military value comes with costs. Environmental contamination from decades of military activity affects many territories. Nuclear testing at Bikini and Enuitak atolls in the 1940s and 50s left lasting damage, and local communities often protest military expansion. They're caught between economic dependence on defense spending and concerns about their land and culture. The economic relationship between the territories and the mainland gets complicated fast. Puerto Rico's economy, with a GDP of $113 billion, is larger than 15 U.S. states, but it's also deeply dependent on federal transfers and tax incentives. The U.S. Virgin Islands relies heavily on tourism, generating $1.4 billion annually from visitors, while Guam receives about $300 million in federal funding each year, not counting military spending. This economic dependency creates a trap. Territories need federal support, but that support comes with federal control. They can't negotiate their own trade deals or set their own immigration policies. The Northern Mariana Islands is the only exception, maintaining its own immigration system as part of its Commonwealth Agreement, though this unique arrangement has led to controversies over labor practices and immigration abuse. Climate change adds another layer of complexity to an already difficult situation. Rising sea levels threaten low-lying Pacific atolls like Kingman Reef and Palmyra Atoll. Hurricanes of increasing intensity batter the Caribbean territories, and when Hurricane Maria devastated Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands in 2017, the federal response highlighted the second-class treatment territories often receive. Recovery took longer and received less attention than similar disasters in the states. Today's debates about America's territories reflect century-old tensions. The Puerto Rico Status Act has been reintroduced in Congress, offering the island a binding referendum on statehood or independence. A Supreme Court case on territorial voting rights is pending. The U.S. Virgin Islands is pushing for a constitutional convention, but these movements face the same political obstacles that have preserved the status quo for decades. The partisan implications are obvious. Puerto Rico and D.C. statehood would likely add Democratic senators, making Republicans reluctant to support change. But it goes deeper than party politics. Granting full rights to territories would mean confronting uncomfortable truths about American empire and the second-class citizenship of millions. Some territories have found alternatives to the statehood or independence binary. The Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau negotiated Compacts of Free Association in 1986. These agreements grant independence while maintaining defense relationships with the United States. Citizens of these nations can live and work in the U.S. without visas, and many serve in the U.S. military. It's a creative solution that preserves sovereignty while acknowledging strategic realities. As America pivots toward great power competition with China, the strategic value of Pacific territories is rising again. Wake Island, home to just 100 military personnel, anchors a crucial military supply line. The Northern Mariana Islands provides backup facilities if Guam is threatened, and even tiny Johnston Atoll, contaminated by chemical weapon disposal, might play a role in future Pacific strategies. But strategic value doesn't erase the fundamental contradiction. America preaches democracy while denying democratic rights to 4.6 million citizens and nationals. It maintains territories acquired through conquest and purchase in an era that supposedly rejected colonialism, and it benefits from territorial military service and strategic location while resisting territorial claims to equal treatment. The story of America's distant territories isn't just about the past. It's about the present reality of American citizens who can die for their country but can't vote for its president. It's about islands that anchor American power in two oceans while their residents remain politically powerless. It's about a nation founded on self-governance maintaining what one scholar called a constellation of colonies. These islands 6,000 miles away aren't just dots on a map or relics of imperial ambition. They're home to millions of Americans whose relationship with their country remains unfinished business. Until that relationship is resolved, the United States will remain what it has always been, an empire that refuses to call itself one, spreading democracy everywhere except the territories it owns.